That's right. This is Get to Know Your District here on Morning Kickaround, where we spotlight various cities and clubs across the United States. And what a better time to focus on Detroit City, as DCFC is set to begin new stadium project. And once it's complete, it'll be the first soccer-specific stadium in Detroit and the biggest footprint for the sport in Michigan. To dig into this, we're happy to be joined by DCFC co-founder, co-owner, and CEO Sean Mann. Welcome to Morning Kickaround, sir.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, Sean. It's good to see you. It's obviously been quite a ride for Detroit City, and now you're building a soccer stadium. I guess before we get into the details of this, and I know we've got a couple of pictures that we want to share. Did you think this day would come when you founded Detroit City back, in the early days when you brought me to Detroit, when you guys were playing short season summer soccer? Did you think you'd be building a stadium for your team one day?
Oh, I mean, yeah, you've been around the ride, and Robert's in our backyard here, so you guys have seen this. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the more remarkable stories in American soccer, right? And so, I think we've always had a lot of ambition, and I think early on we saw the potential, even when we're very humble beginnings in NPSL and at Cass Tech. People were approaching us with ideas, and yeah, I think we've always had a pretty high bar for where we think this club can go. So, and it's hard to articulate the path we've been on and the challenges and the ups and downs. And I think because of our very humble beginnings, I think people take us for granted, I think. And so there's a lot of things that we're going up against to get to this point, and we've got a long way still to go. But it's every now and then you do have to like kind of pinch yourself and look back and just think about this path that we've been on, and it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, Detroit City FC has definitely forged their own way, inventing new versions of promotion and relegation here in the country. We'll get to that in a moment. The biggest news, obviously, I saw your video last week with you showing the players around the site. The old hospital that's going to be brought down is the first big task in building the stadium. What is like the very next thing that's happening in the plans to get this new stadium on the way?
Yeah, I mean, to Jason's earlier question, like, no, I never thought I would own an abandoned hospital or a slaughterhouse. So, again, the things you didn't anticipate. I mean, the rendering you're showing here was an initial concept we shared with the city, and then a reporter FOIA'd. So it's evolved that was from a year ago, and we look forward to releasing the final renderings and plan later this summer. But yeah, we own a van hospital. Thought it'd be fun to take the players through that. We're all about unique life experiences, and so, but we also wanted to show the guys and get them, peek behind the curtain and talk about timelines. And so we are waiting for the permit from the city because we have to pump 1.9 million gallons of water out of the basement of the abandoned hospital we own. And once we get that going and pumped and cleaned, we can start tearing down the hospital in July. And so, just step by step. Then from there, releasing the final plans and starting the public approval process. I mean, our goal is being true to DCFC. I mean, we're trying to create a stadium that's the most locally oriented stadium. I think that speaks to our values and the community that we came out of, and that's I think what's really exciting about the site that we picked. There's all the positive things happening there, and myself and a couple of the other owners all live within a few blocks of the stadium, which is pretty remarkable to have that opportunity. And I think it just fits into the whole narrative around this club.
What I think was remarkable about the story of Detroit City, Sean, and we've got a couple people in the chat. Our member Mike Thomas, credit to DCFC for surviving and adapting through all sorts of twists and turns. That to me is the character of Detroit City from watching from afar. That you've always sort of addressed the next thing in front of you and been willing to adapt. And that actually comes to my question about sort of like, how did this happen financially? Because there was a moment when you were going pro, when you were looking at NISA and obviously USL, where the character of the club could have very much changed because of the financial situation.
I think we've been incredibly fortunate. I mean, there's been I would probably say 5 different variations of DCFC on the back end, where we've had to like tear it down and rebuild it or totally evolve as like who we are. And that's part of, what we're doing now as we gear up for the stadium. We're bringing in, some more experienced people that like who have been down this road before. But to get to this point today, we've been incredibly fortunate to find partners and people who invest in this club, but invested in us, the guys who founded this team and trust our stewardship of the club and the community around it. And so that's been incredibly unique and special, and we don't take that for granted. That people put in a lot of money into DCFC, and their default is well, Sean, Todd, Alex, Dave, it's your club. You make the decision, And so that's incredibly fortunate. And so it really is that vision of what we thought of 15 years ago, kind of manifesting itself into like a permanent home for soccer in Detroit.
I kind of want you to explain to those not familiar with the region, the location that it's actually in and the neighborhood that it's in. Obviously, you mentioned that there's an old hospital that needs to get knocked down, and some folks have asked me, are they going to lose? Is City going to lose some fans by like moving out of Hamtramck? But I kind of wanted you to explain like what's the thought about moving to that specific area and what that might bring in compared to anyone that might not follow along.
Yeah, Hamtramck's been great to us. Keyworth is a lot of fun, and it's a unique spot in the American soccer landscape. And I, suggest people come check it out while we're still there. But it has its extreme limitations. One, we only have 200 some parking spots, and that depends on how rainy it is before a game. More than half the stadium's using porta-johns. We have real no infrastructure. The locker rooms are beyond, we're doing our best to keep everything held together. I joke, in lieu of mortar holding together this 1930s stadium, its charm is the only thing holding that place together. And so, we spent 5 years behind the scenes looking at various sites and engaging on, transactions and like trying to secure land. And I think we caught everybody off guard that we were able to assemble 13 parcels owned by 5 different private entities, and somehow no one figured out what we were up to. And the site we settled on is right kind of just towards the bottom middle of the site. It's just a mile or so west of downtown, and it's really a dead former industrial area, an old meatpacking district and rail spurs that separates Corktown, which is one of the most historic neighborhoods in the city, where there's a lot of small business, a lot of development happening, and Mexican Town, where I live, which, as the title would indicate, has a large Latino population. And we're really bridging these two neighborhoods that there's already existing, entrepreneurial spirit, like small businesses, a lot of retail, bars, restaurants, and but also they're regional destinations where people from across this region feel comfortable going to. And we've had some issues in Hamtramck that I don't want to harp on, but I feel not only is Corktown, Mexican regional attractions outside downtown, 20% of our season ticket holders live in the city of Detroit and live in close proximity of the site. So one of our goals is to have one of the largest bike pads of any stadium in the country, right? And have that take advantage of the natural infrastructure of our fan base being so close to the site we picked.
Now, people love details. I see a couple questions in here from Ewan. He wants to know about a training facility, if you have any response to that possibility, and then he wants to know how different the final rendering will be from the previous ones that we just popped on the screen. The one you said is a year old, and of course, people are thinking like, how big is this going to be? How many bells and whistles are you putting into this, Sean? I mean, I know that you guys have MacGyvered a lot of things in Hamtramck that we've talked about over the years. How much of that is still part of this?
So in terms of size, we are applying for USL D1 status, and so the benchmark there is 15,000. So that's what we're going off of for the for capacity. I think it's gonna have a DCFC aesthetic, but modern amenities. I feel like that the feel of it for the supporters is not going to be that different than Keyworth, except for the fact that there'll be bathrooms and shorter concession lines and things like that. And one of the things we've held to is like still being the only team in North America where the supporters are at midfield, right there along the fence line, within the arm's reach of the players, right? So, so those things, are what we've held to. In terms of the design, yeah, I mean, there's only so much we can do with that site, and so there's just a lot of tweaking going on, and it's a lot of just driving into details and the value engineering and make sure that's a budget we can afford, and that we can, make sure we can pay off the banks to pull this off. One of the things is like there's no billionaire involved in this project. There's no one making personal guarantees, so we have to make sure that like we have the revenue streams we can generate to like pay off the debt to make the banks happy, and so like we have a budget we have to live in, and that's the process we're finalizing right now, making sure everyone's comfortable with what we're putting out there later this year.
Obviously, you said that those renderings that we put on the screen about a year old. So this was in the works before USL came out with the announcement about promotion and relegation. Where does how did that announcement affect the building plans and the team?
The original design when we started getting going, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, was operating off like a 13.5 capacity. So not that different than like Lynn Family, Louisville Stadium. And so, now it's in a matter of squeezing in 1,500 more people into the stadium. Actually, functionally, the bigger headache with that is meeting our parking minimums. So it's meant us having to acquire an extra acre of land that we didn't plan on to being able to accommodate that many more cars. But the stadium was always conceptualized as something that could expand and adjust to demand for the game. So adding 1,500 seats, was not. It's not been the biggest problem we're dealing with.
So at this point, as you said, there are still some steps, some hoops to jump through. If you had to give us a sense of shovels in the ground, webcam that I can watch as the stadium is erected, Sean, when do you have I don't want you to make, I'm sure you don't want to make any guarantees, right? Because there's always potential trip falls in there. But where do you think we are in this process?
I mean, we are pushing everybody and putting a lot of stress on every architect and every contractor and everyone involved in this project that this could be ready for the 27 season, right? And so it's a tight timeline. That's why we're pushing to get 2 million gallons of water pumped out of the basement as soon as possible here, so we can start knocking down that building and showing progress to people. And that's what we're holding ourselves to. And so we know there's all kinds of pitfalls. We've endured lots of pitfalls already privately, and as we're saying, like we do our best to make it work. So yeah, that's our benchmark, is getting to 27, and you'll see progress at the site with the OSPO coming down, here this summer.
Okay, great. Now the stadium is an incredible development for Detroit City, and there that feels like maybe the end game considering where you guys started, but I'm sure there'll be something else. And you mentioned applying for D1 status as USL looks to establish the first division, and obviously Robert mentioned Pro Rel. And since we have somebody who knows what the numbers look like when you're playing at this level of American soccer, there is a debate going on as to whether or not, say, being relegated would fundamentally change your financial position, how much revenue you would lose, Sean, if, God forbid, Detroit City drops down a level. Is that something you have to be concerned about?
So we were, I think, some of the most active owners in the room or outside the room, among the other owners pushing for the Pro Rel. I think we were pretty adamant about it. We've been big boosters for it. Understand and appreciate that there's people in the USL ownership group who have stakes in teams in England and Europe who live and breathe Pro Rel already. I think our setup is unique in that one week we just don't generate revenue off broadcast right now. That model is it puts the onus on us to sell the ads and and so really butts and seats is going to drive everything for us. And pro-rel, I think, there's no silver bullets for American soccer, but for us it's great stories, it's great narrative, and that's something that's on us then to spin to keep people engaged and put those butts in the seats and create a more compelling product. And so yeah, us dropping down to League One and playing Madison, is that different than us being in Championship and playing Lexington? I'll challenge the marketing team to come up with a good story and narrative to compel people to show up to that game, whatever division we're in. And so, yeah, we're excited. I think it's, I can go on and on about like where I think pro-rel, how it, is going to help the league out. But, it's an exciting time. I mean, Jason and Robert, you guys have been in this space for a long time. Like, I could have never imagined that like a Welsh team would be being talked about on Good Morning America, right? And that like lay people, not even like lay sports people, but lay people understand the concept of pro-rel and how it works, right? Or the top sitcom in the country has pro-rel as a key plot line. Like, so it's a incredible opportunity to like tap into people who now understand the concept, but also then like diehard soccer fans who are tuning in on 10 a.m. on Saturday mornings who expect this as part of like the ecosystem, right? And you just never have the opportunity to tap into those two audiences by doing something like this. And so yeah, for us it just makes a more compelling product.
Definitely in a unique moment here in the American soccer landscape. I'm not sure if it's 100% unique, but definitely an unusual situation where a country is adding another league on top of an existing system, because the predecessor to the pro-rel announcement, of course, the Division One news. So has there been any news or further conversations about the way that they're going to fill in the first division in USL?
We're all going through the application process at the moment. I'm sure once they have all the applications in, like they'll have a better idea of like how many teams are coming in and looking to do it. So I'm not in a position to speculate like how that's looking at the moment. I'm just going through all the paperwork they gave us, and I'll be fair. Like I punted a lot of it to staff, but but it's a lot, and they're obviously holding us to a higher standard to move up. So it's a great point for us as we grow as an organization. Like we're challenging ourselves already to be something that's going to thrive in this new venue, and the D1 requirements is just it just gives us another star to point to as we reorient the organization. So but yeah, I mean, it seems like there's enough interest. I was like pleasantly surprised. I was like taken back by as soon as the D1 conversation became real and the league said they're doing it, like ownership groups who I thought were more static, like all of a sudden took it up a notch. And like you're hearing that around, the table of plans and investment, and it's fun. It's exciting. Everyone's challenging each other, and you just can't take anything for granted. And I think that's a good spot to be.
Sounds incredible. I'm ready, Sean. I'm ready. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, CEO of DCFC, Sean Mann. Thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Kickaround. Very exciting to follow the story as it continues. You've come a long way and still a long way to go on this journey. Thank you for sharing with us this morning.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, viewers, MK Ultras, if you're watching this and if you haven't hit subscribe yet, do so now. Then tell all your friends to do similarly. We are doing a goal, 3 members of MK Ultras. We get 3 new members and we will create some new bonus content. None thus far, but if you want us to get more guests, we'll have more opportunity to bring in those first hand sources. We got the CEO of a team on here, and if we have more opportunities, more time to make these connections, we can get more segments like that.
You're going to learn a lot about sort of how soccer works in America, I think, from this show. Obviously, MLS gets a lot of the attention. They got the most money, they got the biggest stadiums, but there's so much happening below the MLS level obviously with USL, and I think Sean gave us a couple of things I didn't know. I learned something from Sean and got some insight into this process as USL sort of reformulates their business plan moving forward. We've been talking about some amateur teams and how good they've done in terms of attendance. So there's lots of things happening. Support the show, and you'll get a lot more. You'll get early access and probably some extra stuff that we won't put out publicly when we talk to people like Sean Mann.
If you want to follow along on social media, you can do that too at Morning Kickaround X, Instagram, Blue Sky. Write us a note at morningkickaround@gmail.com. One of our bonus segments, we've got some more pro-rel manifestos and some other really nice notes that have been sent in. We got one with some renderings from the old Minnesota Stadium and some before and afters of like what was the initial plan and what came out. So that was a cool note to get in the inbox. So collaborative affair here. Like I stumbled through trying to become one of the American centers of the soccer conversation, and you are a big part of that.